Okay, students, today we're going to talk about the ventricles of the brain. So, ventricles are actually the expansion of the central canal of the neural tube. So, aligned with the epidermal and contain the cerebrospinal fluid, contain the choroid plexus, which produce cerebrospinal fluid, communicate with the subarachnoid space via three foramina in the fourth ventricle, consist of four fluid-filled communicating cavities within the brain. So let's talk about the general. They are the expansion of the brain's central cavity, filled with the cerebrospinal fluid, lined with the epidermal cells, continuous with each other, continuous with the central canal of the spinal cord. So we can talk about the lateral ventricles. There are two lateral ventricles, and we are looking here from the lateral view. So you can see here this is the left side, and behind it that right side. So the two lateral ventricles located in the cerebral hemisphere, horseshoe shaped from bending of the cerebral hemisphere. We got here the frontal horn, you got the body here, we got the posterior horn, and then here we got the lateral horn. Frontal horn is located in the frontal lobe, and body is located in the frontal and the parietal lobe, and it got the choroid plexus. And we got here the posterior horn. The posterior horn is located in the parietal and the occipital lobe, and the inferior horn is located in the middle part of the temporal lobe, and also have the choroid plexus here. Talking about the third ventricle. The third ventricle we got here lies in the dens vallon. It's connected with the lateral ventricles by the interventricular foramina, also known as the foramina of the monoroid, and also contain the paired choroid plexus in its roof. We got here the cerebral aqueduct, also known as the aqueduct of the sylvis, lies in the midbrain. It connects the third ventricle with the fourth ventricle. This duct we can see here. Okay, and if the blockage happened, then we call that the condition as the hydrocephalus. In this view we can see here the both side, the lateral ventricle, we got here the third ventricle, and here we are getting the fourth ventricle. So when we talk about the fourth ventricle, that lies in the hindbrain, it connects the central canal of the spinal cord downward. And furthermore, if we talk about the fourth ventricle, it lies actually between the cerebellum and the brainstem, contain the pair of choroid plexus in its caudal roof, expresses the cerebrospinal fluid into the subarachnoid space via the two lateral foramina of the Luschaka and the single medial foramina of the Magendai. Cerebrospinal fluid. Watery solution similar in composition to the blood plasma forms a liquid cushion that gives buoyancy to the central nervous system organs, prevents the brain from the crushing under its own weight, protects the central nervous system from blows and other traumas, nourishes the brain and carries chemical signals through it, formed in choroid plexus in the brain ventricles. If we want to talk more about the cerebrospinal fluid, it is true that it's forming in the choroid plexus in the brain ventricles, and coming out or seeping out from the blood and returning back into the blood by the arachnoid villi, as we have learned in the meninges. Talking about the choroid plexus, cluster of capillaries that form tissues fluid filters which hang from the roof of each ventricle, have ion pumps that allow them to alter ion concentration of the cerebrospinal fluid, helps clean cerebrospinal fluid by removing the waste. Here we go to the simple diagram of the choroid plexus, and we can see the section of the choroid plexus. We got here the epidermal cell, and we got here the capillary and the capillary wall, and we can see here that waste and unnecessary fluid absorbed back into the blood capillary, and filtrate containing the glucose, oxygen, vitamins and ions. Talking about the blood-brain barrier, protective mechanism that helps maintain a stable environment for the brain. Blood-borne substances are separated from the neurons by continuous endothelium of the capillary wall, relatively thick basal lamina, bulbous feet of astrocytes, not an absolute barrier actually. Nutrients such as oxygen pass through, allow alcohol, nicotine and anesthetic through. Absent in some areas such as hypothalamus, allows these areas to monitor the chemical composition and temperature of the blood. Here the summary for the ventricles of the brain: two lateral, and then interconnected with the third as the interventricular foramen, then the third ventricle, then interconnected with the fourth ventricle through the cerebral aqueduct, and the fourth ventricle having the two lateral aperture, one median and one downside, connecting with the central canal. Thank you very much.